Thank you for listening and supporting the Daily Memphian. Sign up for one of our many free newsletters and breaking news alerts at dailymemphian.com/email to receive the latest local news stories impacting our community. Our weekly newsletters cover everything from sports to arts and culture, business, food, and more, along with daily updates of all the news we publish each day. Sign up or manage your email preferences at dailymemphian.com/email.
I'm Bill Dries, reporter for the Daily Memphian. Our guests today are Danielle Inez, Chief of Staff to Shelby County Mayor Lee Harris, and Ann Stuhl-Dreher, who is with the City of San Francisco, and this is On the Record. We record this Tuesday, February 22nd, 2022. Danielle, we are having this conversation because the administration is reviewing fines and fees in the local criminal justice system. Tell me what that review entails and how long this review is expected to take.
Well, thank you so much, Bill, for having us, and thank you for covering this topic. We actually started this work as a part of Cities and Counties for Fines and Fee Justice, and I want to say that began right near the beginning of the pandemic back in 2020. And that group based out of California required that we take a deep dive into all of the various fines and fees that we have in place that might negatively impact individuals who are incarcerated or who have some interaction with our criminal or civil system. And so we started that work back then, and it's been ongoing ever since. Fines and fees are plentiful. And so there's a lot of work to do. And I think our perspective is just to try to chip away at it as best we can while we're here in these roles.
Mm-hmm. Ann Stuhl-Dreher, you are director of the Financial Justice Project for the City of San Francisco. The idea that fines and fees keep some people bound to the criminal justice system for an unnecessary period of time after they have done their time and even cleared probation or parole has been around for a while in criminal justice reform discussions. Are there fines and fees that have a place and are necessary in our criminal justice system for restitution and similar purposes, or is this a broader rethink of this idea?
Yeah, no, that's a great question. And let me just say thank you so much for having me here today for this really important discussion. Fines and fees have always been with us. I think they will be with us moving forward. We think that they should be equitable. A fine that is $100 hits people very differently, depending on what their income level is. For some people, that means, if they get a ticket of $100, they may not be able to buy groceries that month. Other folks, it may not hit at all. We have found that in the criminal justice system, in our court system, taking a look at all our transportation fines and fees, some of these were doing more harm than good. They were hitting people very differently about our community, throughout our community. And, we wanted to take a hard look, as they're doing in Shelby County, and, try to chip away at it, do some cleanup. And, we've been doing that work for some time now, as are cities and counties across the country.
Mm-hmm. So what has happened in this regard in San Francisco? And I'm assuming here that San Francisco has been at this for a while as well, right?
Yes, we have. There was a lot of outcry from the, communities in San Francisco about the heavy toll that fines and fees were taking on folks, especially people with low incomes and community of color. So, some things we did, just to mention a few, At the time, we were suspending people's driver's licenses when they could not, pay a traffic ticket or when they missed a court date. So, we eliminated that penalty, which was, pretty extreme for when folks couldn't pay a traffic ticket. Taking away their license, made it very likely they'd lose their job. And then, not be able to meet any of their financial obligations. So, we got rid of that and ended up, sending out more reminders, offering people an ability to pay discount, et cetera. We saw no, difference in, revenue that was coming in. But, again, we just thought that made more sense. We've, also done a lot of things. You mentioned at the beginning, fines and fees in the criminal justice system. Before we started this, we were charging people $50 a month to be on probation. We were charging people up to $35 a day to rent an electronic ankle monitor. So people were, getting out of jail. They were on probation. They were, being punished in all sorts of ways, but, their debt wasn't paid. They were being hit with fines and fees that added up to a few $1,000s. And, they were charged to very low income people who couldn't pay them. They created huge barriers to people's reentry right when they were trying to get back on their feet. And they were a terrible source of revenue. I think the collection rate on one of the larger fees, the monthly probation fee, was just 9%. So, we became one of the first places in the country to get rid of all those fees. We really found that they were high pain and low gain and did much more harm than good.
Mm-hmm. Danielle, where do we stand specifically with those fines for being on probation and that sort of thing? Do we have that in Shelby County?
Yes, and it is a travesty. And I'll just tell you, part of the pain of going through the Cities and Counties for Fine and Fee Justice program was just really getting exposure into how broad the fines and fees go and how little thought is really put into the enforcement of them and what you're really trying to accomplish. So yes, right now, if a person is on probation, I think they pay weekly. This is while they are simultaneously just trying to meet the requirements of probation, which are usually talking to your probation officer, applying for and interviewing for jobs. So really trying to do the right thing so that they stay out of the system and they're simultaneously being taxed for it. But the difficult thing for us in Shelby County is a lot of the fines and fees that we discovered are really prioritized by the state. And so then they're funneled through at the county level, but they're really state driven. And I can't say specifically, I won't lie right now. I can't say specifically which ones, but the vast majority of them, probably 70, 80, maybe even 90% of them are state driven. And so we really had to, for the sake of the program and trying to make a difference, we tried to identify fines and fees that are levied at the local level, completely controlled at the local level. The funds go into the general fund, and just seeing where we can swiftly make changes because it's just so obvious that those fines and those fees aren't needed.
Right.
Yeah.
Right. And I think we've both seen several attempts to reduce fines and fees. And one of the first arguments that always seems to come up, and this is at the local and the state level, is someone will argue that they need that revenue stream because it helps to pay for some part of operations of the system. I think the last argument like that was over eliminating the expungement fee completely, because a part of it paid for background investigations done by the district attorney's office. And there may be some staffing in the system that relies on that revenue. Is that a legitimate argument in all of this, that we've got to have that revenue stream to pay for this part of the system?
No, not at all. And actually, there have been a lot of studies done at the national level that really speak to operationally your operation should not rely on punitive fees and fines for you to be able to operate successfully. As a government, be it a state government or a local government, we have to build operations that are really driven by revenue like taxes, so property taxes, sales taxes, and really providing the services that we need through mechanisms that aren't punitive. And when you look at the jail, when you look at our state courts and you look at our general sessions courts, I had to look through their budgets again, just as a part of this process, and it's all just interwoven in there. And it shouldn't be. Best practice is that it shouldn't be like that. And the reason why is it makes it where you're on the wrong side and you're making arguments like the one you just referenced without really considering the harm that you're doing to the individuals and the families. And usually it's the family that's paying these fines and paying these fees. But the harm that you're doing to them is they're trying to pull themselves out of the justice system and become contributors to our society in a moral way. You really make it difficult for them to do that when you place your priorities on continuing with punitive fines and fees.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
go ahead, Ann.
Yeah, I just want to say I completely agree with Danielle. And, a lot of times these, like expungement fees, what have you, they're a penny wise and a pound foolish. And sure, in government, we might be balancing our budgets and looking at numbers, kind of on a spreadsheet. And, these fees or fines, may bring in, a little bit of revenue, but again, just the larger costs that they place on people's families, and sometimes, can, the expungement fee, if someone can't pay that, again, that makes it much harder for them to get a job. One thing Danielle and I have talked a lot about are, the costs that, fall on incarcerated folks, the high cost of phone calls, the high cost of commissary. Jails, prisons across the country, generate revenue by jacking up the prices of phone calls. But, all the research shows that the more incarcerated people stay in touch with their families, the better they do when they get out. And recidivism is the biggest cost driver in the criminal justice system. So, I think a lot of the way we've been doing this is just really a lose-lose for government and for people.
Mm-hmm. So Ann, are you kind of looking over the shoulder here, or kind of watching how this system operates compared to what's happened in San Francisco, and kind of saying that these were the best practices that we've used here? Because as I understand it, San Francisco is still in the process of reviewing this and changing these rules, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think it's an ongoing process for us to look at our fines and fees, and every city and county is different. And Danielle talked about, right, like what's driven by the state level in Tennessee is, different from California. So in cities and counties for fine and fee justice, we really came together to learn from each other and, exchange best practices. This is, I think, really an emerging area for local governments. Danielle, I don't know if I've had a chance to mention this to you, but we are having a cities and counties for fine and fee justice boot camp in Phoenix coming up here. And, again, sometimes when we decide to have these things, it's like, okay, is anybody going to want to come? So, we're oversubscribed for that. There's going to be people from over 50 cities and counties across the country who, kind of, I think, know that that there's a lot of room for improvement, and that, you got to see what's there, as they're doing in Shelby County. And then, as Danielle said, you start to chip away at it.
Mhm. Danielle, the administration recently, I believe, ended paying for telephone calls at the Criminal Justice Center jail, at the county jail at 201. Did you not?
Yeah, so I think they've made some adjustments for 201 Poplar and certainly at the Division of Corrections, which is under the administration, to allow video visitation for detainees, and that's been largely in light of COVID. We also eliminated fees completely for children who are incarcerated who need to be in contact with their loved ones because, as Ann mentioned, when you think about recidivism, staying in contact is one of the number one ways to keep that cost down. We also, on the county administration side, we eliminated the cost of just going to the doctor. Using the Division of Corrections as an example, the county was quote unquote making $13,000 of a multi-million-dollar budget, 13 grand, by charging inmates to go see a doctor. Well, the pandemic shed light on that issue, and it just simply doesn't make any sense. Why are we trying to collect $13,000 if it means that these individuals will sit and possibly spread, a disease around to their peers, all because they don't want to spend the money to go see a doctor, or because their family members aren't in a position to put the money on the books. And why are they in a deficit? They can't buy commissary because they are negative on their account because they had to go see the doctor because they were that ill, and so it was just deducted from their account. And so that's something that it existed for years and years. And the case was made, over a decade ago, probably, that this will help keep people from going to see the doctor. We want them to go see the doctor. We want people to go see a doctor if you don't feel well, regardless if you're behind bars or if you're out in the community. And so that was something that we worked on with tremendous success. People said that it would be abused. I checked right before this call just to make sure that what I said today would be the most updated information. There's no evidence of abuse. It's just people, when they are sick, they do what they should do, and they go get medical care so that it doesn't spiral and become worse.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. Anne brought up a good point about systems being different. In Shelby County government, as we certainly both know, the criminal justice system is run by elected officials who have some degree of autonomy from the county administration, and or are considered elected state officials, even though they serve right here in Shelby County. Is that kind of a minefield to consider when you get recommendations and you say, okay, this is what we want to do? I mean, you've already talked about some of the state laws and rules that apply to these fees and how you're trying to get at the ones that you're able to have some say over. Is the structure kind of meaning that you have to consult with more people before you can do anything?
So that's a bit loaded. I'll say that it really depends on your perspective. If you want to be able to race and get things done just as an individual operator, then yes, it's very, very difficult to do that because you have to check in with the sheriff. You have to get approval from the county commission. If it's going to involve judges, you need their support as well. The public defender's office, the district attorney, depending on what it is, you have to get buy-in from all of these people. The reason why I'm less inclined today, 3.5 years into the administration, I'm less inclined to say that that's a bad thing is because it ultimately usually makes the outcome a lot better when you have those perspectives. Talking to the sheriff, for example, and talking to several members of the county commission, I usually find people who are eager to address the problem, but they might ask questions from a different perspective than I would consider. The sheriff has some exposure to jail operations. I don't. We were trained and supported by individuals out in California, but that's not Memphis and Shelby County. And so it is helpful. It means something that might be able to get done in a week. It might take 4 or 5 months, but you are able to ultimately get things accomplished. And so far, I've been pleased with our results as an administration.
A fair point to make. So what has the reception been like lately in this ongoing issue as this has gotten more specific? What have you heard from these leaders of other parts of the system?
So, the public defender is all for it because so many people that are behind bars are their clients. I think about a third are supported by the public defender's office, and then another third are supported by private defenders or private attorneys who are assigned by the public defender. They're super supportive. Obviously, we have Commissioner Sawyer, Commissioner Whaley, Commissioner Turner, Chairman Brooks. I'm trying to think of people I've worked directly with on some of these reforms. And if you sit them down and you make the case, they just want to see it happen. They do not ask what is the budgetary impact. The sheriff's perspective is obviously they're in a volatile environment like the jail. And so anytime we talk to him, he is very candid about making sure that, they're contemplating the culture and the spirit over in our jail. So they've been responsible thought partners, which is, I think, why I don't have any hesitancy about working with them.
All right. And a final word from you on where you think this process is going and kind of your impressions of the way our criminal justice system works here compared to what you've worked with there.
Yeah, I'll just say what Danielle was saying about making the rounds, talking to the sheriff, the chief of probation, the public defender, the judges, the mayor's office. That can be a long process, but ultimately I think is a really vital one. And I do think, as Danielle said, although sometimes it can be a lot of meetings, it leads to a better outcome. I think this is a really important first step for Shelby County. These medical copays, for incarcerated people are still happening in 40 to 50 states. So I think this is important, not only for incarcerated people and their families in Shelby County. I think this is going to be an important, example for other places as well. And, as Danielle described, I think as you start digging into this, you start to see more of these high paying, low gain fees where the math just doesn't add up. You're bringing in some revenue, yes, but, the harm that some of these things can cause, can be really tremendous, to both individuals and to families. So, I'm really excited to see the path that Shelby County is on. I know we'll continue to learn from Shelby County, and others will. And, I just hope that, all of us in government, can continue to take a hard look at these things and, really listen to folks in the community about what the harms are. And then we can really turn to each other in government and say, what can we do here? What can we do here that's feasible and will really make a difference in people's lives? And that's why I think we all went into government. So, again, I'm just very happy to be here and talk about this. And thank you so much for having me.
All right. We've been talking with Ann Stuhl-Dreher, Director of the Financial Justice Project for the City of San Francisco, and Danielle Inez, Chief of Staff to Shelby County Mayor Lee Harris. I'm Bill Dries, and this has been On the Record.
In-depth journalism in the Memphis community. The Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.